Hi everyone, Brian Post here. Welcome to 16-week adoption parenting coaching and certification, session 13. Got a very special session for you this time, and essentially it kind of came about because I had a parent in the network that had some really good questions, and so I thought it would be a great opportunity to take a session and essentially just answer the questions from the mom and to kind of give you all as future certified adoption parent coaching instructors to give you an opportunity to just kind of process with me through the questions, and it also gives the mom, Heidi, an opportunity to hear the answers kind of firsthand and off the cuff, so to say, because I just kind of look at it, and as I go along, I'm going to give you my thoughts, my feedback, my ideas, whatever flows through me, and you can take that, and hopefully it'll be beneficial to you and your family. So we're going to start here. I'm going to turn on my pen. Everyone knows I like to use my trusty little pen. Turn my pen on. We're going to get started here by just looking at a little bit of the background information. So we have 3 kids that have trauma history and triggers. Absolutely. If you have trauma history, you have triggers. High levels of drug and alcohol exposure. Let's see. So I'm just mark that in the womb. All right. Neglect and are over under responsive. So they all react in different ways, and the 9-year-old has the most difficulty. He's currently in special school, has some medical issues, learning difficulties, and high anxiety, aggression, stress levels. So I'm going to say that these issues, I got all, definitely. Find my pen here. These issues certainly go into creating many of these. I mean, all of those are consistent. Drug and alcohol exposure is consistently affects short-term memory, so you're going to have learning difficulties. I always say, what do social skills, learning difficulties, and what is that other one? Is social skills, learning difficulties, and lack of conscience. What do those have in common? Can anyone tell me that? I'm just going to write that down right quick. Where's my pen at? There it is. So poor social skills, lack of conscience, and learning difficulties. What do these things all have in common? Easy, the common denominator, stress. Stress and fear. If you are stressed out and fearful, then you are regressed. If you are regressed, then you are, and I'm going to just arrow up here. If you are regressed, then remember, you have chronological, your 3 ages. You have cognitive, and you have emotional. And it goes up. The emotion dictates the chronological and the cognitive. When you stress, you regress. If you are stressed and you're regressed, and it is dictating your cognitive, and it is dictating your chronological, then you might be 9 years old, but literally in that moment you are most likely emotionally 3, and you could be an infant. And if you are an infant who had drug and alcohol exposure, you're an infant who in the womb experienced neglect, then you are really going to be stressed out and not able to be on the same even keel as other 9-year-olds. See, literally there's an emotional developmental imbalance. And then lack of conscience. When you are in a state of stress and fear, that correlates to survival. If you are in a state of survival, who is your main focus? You can't focus on anyone except for yourself. So in the moments of heightened stress, and children act out against other children, and then as parents, we want to see that our child is demonstrating some level of remorse or sympathy, and the child's not able to do it. Well, the reason is because in that moment the child's in a state of stress and fear. They are in survival. They can't be empathetic. They can't be concerned in that moment because they're stressed out. Now, depending on the history, it could be even bigger than that. So then you have that dynamic. And then learning difficulties. Learning difficulties, again, this is very, 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 I mean, this is just critical. This is critical. If you are in a state of stress, in times of stress, and I've been hammering this home to you all, this entire we're on week 13, so I've mentioned this almost every week for 13 weeks. In times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted. And our short-term memory is suppressed. It's suppressed. It's shut down. So if you are exposed to chronic levels of stress and fear, you're thinking you're going to have learning difficulties. You're not going to be able to learn effectively. So that's a little review. Let's get on into some of the questions that Heidi has. I went backwards. Number 1, you talked about containment and time in. Yes. I have to do this a lot with my 9-year-old boy, but sometimes he won't come away from the situation to be with me, and I have to try to physically bring him away. Not always successful. Okay, let's stop there. The purpose of time in, containment and time in are two different things. Containment is reducing the space that the child has to feel threatened in, reducing the space that the child has to experience sensory input and stimulation because they're not able to regulate it effectively. So you do containment to reduce the space. So you have to ask yourself, what is your idea of containment with your 9-year-old? What does that look like? Is that keeping him limited to the living room? Is that keeping him limited to the dining room and the kitchen? In the house, is that keeping him in the front seat when you guys go driving somewhere? What is containment? Because containment ultimately is different than time in. Time in is a technique used when you see that your child has already reached a level of dysregulation, maybe exceeded their window of tolerance, and you request that they come to you in order for you to provide that effective oxytocin extension, that effective hippocampal extension is what I call it from time to time, because you're the most significant regulatory figure in your child's life when your child has exceeded their window of tolerance, when they have moved into that place of dysregulation, when they are obviously demonstrating that their oxytocin response is not working effectively. Time in is used for you to be able to create that extension to help create that soothing. Now, what if your child won't come to you? Well, that's okay. What you don't want to do is you don't want to have to physically bring him away because that's going to create stress. That's actually going to be creating the contrast to actually what you want to be creating. So I was in Canada once and I had a kid. We were playing on the playground. His name was Tyler, and he was about 9 years old. And Tyler was he was playing. He was getting escalated, and all of a sudden he started kicking, and he started to cuss. That would always be his little signal. And so I noticed it and I said, "Hey Tyler, why don't you come over for a little bit?" And so he didn't want to come over. In fact, he went to the opposite side of the little jungle gym. Tyler was known for being a runner. So what I didn't want to do with Tyler is I didn't want to to come after him. I didn't want to create a heightened stress response for him. So I didn't move. I think I stood up. You know, he's literally 20 feet away from me, 30, maybe even 20 yards, more like 20 yards away. So I said to him, and they're 3 feet in a yard, so it's literally 60 feet away. He's a good distance away, so I just waved over at him, Tyler, come on over. And he moved to the other side of the jungle gym, and all I did is I kept my eyes focused on him. Not in a threatening way, not in a mean way, just in a smiling, kind of easy, relaxed way. And he was, you know, on the other side, he wanted to run. I could feel it, but I wasn't increasing the stress. And so every now and then, you know, he was kind of walking around in circles. He'd look up at me, and I'd still be looking at him, and I'd smile, and I'd just wave at him to come over. I'd just wave at him, come over. He'd walk around in a circle, and he'd look up, and I'd wave at him again. And pretty soon after that, shortly after that, he kind of started walking his way back through the jungle gym, kicking sand, cussing, and he made his way all the way back over. And I said, why don't you just hang out with me for a little bit, buddy? I can tell you're kind of stressed. And that's how I brought him in. But the reality is just focusing my vibration on him, just focusing my attention, my energy in a loving, understanding way is going to bring him in. I don't want to have to physically put my hands on him. As soon as I have to do that, and here's the thing I'm going to tell you. If you cannot create emotional containment, if you cannot hold your child emotionally, D.W. Winnicott talked about it, creating an emotional holding environment. Parents create an emotional holding environment for their children. That's non-physical. If you cannot create an emotional containment for your child, an emotional holding environment for your child, you should not physically hold them, because in that moment, you are not mindful of what your own internal state is. You may think you are calm, but the moment you have to get up and walk over to your child, you are no longer in a calm place. The moment you have to get up and make a transition, you are in a state of stress, because that's just what we do. We stress through transition. And so you have to be able to create that energetic kind of dynamic for him that says, hey, I can tell that you're not in a good place. I'm not going to force you to come over here. I want you to come over here. I'm inviting you to come over here because I know you're not in a good place. So I'm just going to wait. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to look at you. I'm going to watch you. And slowly but surely, you're going to come over. We're going to hang out. And then that's how you bring him in. Because if you have to physically bring him in, it's probably not going to work very well. And then you've just escalated the stress some even more. So you say sometimes he'll sit on your lap, but not for long enough. This is very good. If he will sit on your lap, then that means he trusts you. If he will sit on your lap, that means at this point he doesn't perceive you as a threat. That's good. So what do you do when he gets on your lap? Is you just calm yourself down. You just say, honey, I can tell you're a little stressed. You're a little worked up. Just hang out here with mama for a little bit. You know, that's all you got to do is just relax. And just, I like to say to kids, I like to encourage parents to say to kids, whenever you feel like getting up, that's okay. Okay, but if you don't feel like he's capable of determining that for himself yet, then you say, let me have a little bit of time with it to make sure that you feel that you're feeling settled and you're feeling loved and safe. And then that's how you set the time. If you need to say 10 minutes, say 10 minutes. But you're just gauging the time based on, you know, how do you think he's feeling? Okay, so then you mentioned here that he puts his thumb. He will put his thumb in and start to relax. That tells you he is regressed. See, that's telling you right there, when he starts using the thumb, that's infantile. That's the neglect showing up. That's the prenatal, perinatal exposure showing up. That's telling you that you have a 9-year-old child who is bearing between 2 years and infancy. Okay, so I'm going to recommend with this child that at least twice a day, if not 3 times a day, you go back to a bottle with him, and he's probably going to take it. My kind of theory on bottle feeding is you offer it to the child. If the child does not need it, they won't take it. But if they need it, they'll take it. So you get a bottle, you put some vanilla rice milk or something not real sugary, kind of healthy in the bottle. A friend of mine used to use fat-free milk and molasses. The milk has to be a little sweet because that's what stimulates oxytocin. That's what's stimulated when children are breastfeeding, and it's the sucking and the sweet and the closeness and the connection that will allow you to turn on his oxytocin response. With a child who has neglect, bottle feeding is probably going to be a very, very important thing. And if you'll do that in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening 3 times, if he'll let you, and I'm pretty sure he will, I just get a sense here because of the thumb that, and that tells me that there was probably some pretty significant neglect, that he will allow you to do that. And if he will allow you to do that, if you can make that happen, you're going to see some remarkable emotional shifts happen with this young man in a very short period of time. So I want to encourage the bottle there. So you say that he maybe even looks sad, or he's just about to cry, and then he stops himself and starts being hyper. This is, again, classic neglect behavior. That is classic neglect behavior, because what he learned as an infant is that crying is not soothing. Crying is because, in the way he learned that crying is not soothing is because he probably cried and didn't have anyone come soothe him. See, infants who cry and have a parent come soothe them learn that crying is okay, learns that crying can actually generate soothing, that crying doesn't have to just generate cortisol and stress. Well, what your son learned very early is that crying doesn't generate soothing, crying generates more stress, and depending on the neglect of the environment, crying could actually generate pain. So he's got a memory that gets triggered and stirred up, which says when he cries, his amygdala gets activated, his adrenaline goes up, his cortisol spikes, and that's where the hyperactivity comes from. And then he jumps into his 2-year-old aggressive state, which is a deeply fear-based state, but it's a little up higher than the infancy. See, he keeps jumping back and forth. He's going all the way back to the infant, and then he's jumping up to the 2-year-old place. So I'd be curious to know what was going on when he was 2 years old. You know, maybe you need to create some narratives around that for him. Maybe you need to, just say when you have to do time in with him, which brings me to another point. I want to make sure I don't forget it. I'm going to come back to it, which brings me to it. I'm going to make sure I remember this point, which is prevention. However, when you are doing the bottle feeding, you want to create maybe a narrative with him and just talk about it. When you got to pull him in for a time in, you want to be able to say, you know what, son? When you were a baby, you were really scared. And I can tell when you get stressed out or worked up or angry right now, you really get stressed out and scared again, and you feel like mommy can't love you and keep you safe. I can love you and keep you safe. No one's going to hurt you. Speak to his experience, because that's very, very important. And then with this particular young man, you want to do more prevention. You got to get more attuned. But I also have to interject at this point, is that you really have to check in with yourself as the parent, and how much stress is this young man creating for you? How much stress is being generated in the home that's not being interrupted? How much oxytocin is present in the home? So let me just write that down. Oxytocin. That's the brain's anti-stress hormone. Okay? And let me tell you what's important about that. What's important about that is that oxytocin is a learned response. So guess what happens if you grow up in an environment of neglect? Exactly. You're not learning oxytocin. It is diminished. So your oxytocin response, so you experience cortisol, and guess what happens when you grow up in an environment of neglect with cortisol? It increases. Your amygdala gets stronger, your oxytocin response is diminished, and then there you have this ongoing imbalance in your brain as you get older, as you age. So I want to interject, I'll continue my interjection here, is how much stress is being created in the home. How much oxytocin are the parents feeling? When was the last time you guys had fun? When was the last time you laughed? When was the last time you went to the pool and just frolicked and laid in the sun and tickled and wrestled and shared ice cream and told jokes and just had a good time? When was the last time that there was laughter shared in the home? Because that's oxytocin, and you need oxytocin to interrupt the stress. Otherwise, the entire family starts to live in an environment of trauma. Any environment where there is prolonged, overwhelming, unpredictable stress for 3 to 6 months or longer, that is a trauma environment. Now, children can't heal in a trauma environment, and parents become wounded. All right, so that's if you don't have any trauma in your history. You know, no single brain can withstand prolonged states of stress that's not interrupted. So with the interjection here is I want to say, you have to be mindful as a parent of yourself, because raising 3 children who have severe trauma histories is not easy. It is hard. It is stressful. It is overwhelming. It will suppress your own oxytocin response. You have to do things to take care of yourself. You have, even if it's just little 5-minute increments of time, and then eventually finding yourself a nanny or a sitter who can come over so that you can go out and have a date night at least once a week, so you can get a couple of hours to go for a walk without having someone constantly pulling on you, needing that stress and that stress regulation, needing that oxytocin from you, because that's just not sustainable. So I want to really bring that to your attention. And then I want to say, with your 9-year-old, you have to practice prevention. And the reason I brought up the interjection about taking care of yourself as a parent is because if you are not taking care of yourself as a parent and you are stressed, then when he is needing you, your attunement levels are going to be down. You're not going to be as attuned as you probably need to be with him because you're so stressed, and then because you're not attuned, you don't sense the signals, you don't hear the signals, you don't listen to the signals. Before you know it, he's gone outside of his window of tolerance, his cortisol spiked, he's become aggressive, and he just goes on, and then it just gets worse from there. So, and I really like this. He starts wandering around. Think about this. Now, I don't even know at what age your child was when he was adopted, but this is so classic trauma repatterning. He's wandering around, becoming aggressive. This is a classic neglected child. When he hits that state in his brainstem, he is all alone again, and you've got to be able to say to him, I can keep you safe. I'm not going to hurt you. You got to make sure he's getting some food. You got to make sure this kid is eating at a very basic, regulated physiologic level. He's got to be eating some food, because as soon as he gets hungry, he's going to drop right into his brainstem, and that's where all this negativity is going to get stored. So that's very important for you to keep in mind. This is a kid that needs to be snacking regularly, but he's also a child who could be failure to thrive because of his prenatal exposure and his early neglect. So the wandering around just becomes another telltale sign to you when he is stressed out. And I'm going to tell you, the first thing you got to do is you got to calm yourself down. You got to try to pull yourself back in, because otherwise it's just going to escalate. So you say, it's important for him to show us feelings, but I'd rather he cry than hit. Absolutely. Absolutely, you want him to cry more so than hit. But here's the thing. I don't have a lot of room here, and I'm not sure if you've seen this before, but we have 3 pathways of emotional expression. And I'm pretty sure you've seen it in some of my materials, but just in case you haven't, we have attitudes, feelings, and behaviors. When children are acting out at the level of behaviors, that is because this is their learned pattern. They don't know how to express their feelings. They don't know how to express their attitudes when they're at this level, because this is what's been conditioned. And we classically try to suppress the behavioral expression. But what you have to be able to do is, when he drops into the behaviors, even though you'd rather him to cry than hit, because there's not one of us who wouldn't rather a child cry than hit, you have to be able to meet him in those behaviors. You have to say, son, I can tell you're really scared right now. I can tell you're really angry and really sad. Tell mommy, use your words. Tell me how angry you are. Tell me how sad you are. Tell me how scared you are. And so you're using your words to coach him through the process of using his words. Give me just one moment. I'm getting a little heated up here. I need to turn the air conditioner down. My wife says I keep it, what'd she say? She says it's cold enough to hang meat in here. Yeah, she doesn't have nearly the body fat levels that I have. So, when he's in behaviors and he is in that aggressive state, you want to call him on that. You want to say, I can see how angry you are right now. I can see how stressed out you are right now, and I know that you're mad, and mommy needs you to use your words. I'm not going to hurt you. I don't want you to hurt me. It's not okay to hurt your brothers and sisters. Use your words. Tell me how you're feeling. Let me know how you're feeling. And really work on getting him to express and communicate what is going on with him in that moment. But he's got to be in behaviors, because without behaviors, he can't get up to feelings. And then he's not going to be able to get up to attitudes. So you got to be able to help him. You want to meet him at the level of his behaviors without trying to suppress it. That's what's important. Meet him at the level of his behaviors without trying to suppress it, but give him and coach him through learning how to use his words and telling him, I want your words, I want your feelings. Your feelings are okay. Because remember, he never learned that his feelings were okay. He's been suppressed. His attitudes have been suppressed. His feelings have been suppressed, all the way down to his behaviors. The behaviors are all that he's got. So you want to help him learn to work through his behaviors to get through the level of his feelings. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Now, number 2, mealtime and bedtime are real hot spots for our family. My 9-year-old used to have a lot of food issues. He's a lot better now, but still needs a lot of support to eat a meal at the table. So we're talking about core circadian rhythm opportunities here. So these are, I'm going to write that down because it's a word you want to remember. Circadian rhythms. All right, and what triggered that for me is right here. Mealtime and bedtime. Fundamentally, your circadian rhythms, which is controlled by a little mechanism in your brain called the SCN, which is a suprachiasmatic nucleus. This controls your circadian rhythms. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus helps you to calm down enough to feel hungry and to eat. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus helps you to calm down, to relax, to sleep. But guess what? If you grew up in environments of neglect, you have a disrupted suprachiasmatic nucleus. Because see, you didn't have a parent who would come and sit down with you to feed you, to calm you down. So you didn't have an environment to soothe you and nurture you to sleep. You know, like my daughter, who has never laid down, who's never went to bed by herself in her 10 years. Same with my 19-year-old. They always had a parent there with them to soothe them to sleep, and now they all sleep very well. And how many times, have we eaten meals together? So, and how many times as infants did they breastfeed, and did they have a parent who fed them mouth to mouth, and it's just from mouth to hand to mouth. it's just one of those things that helps regulate. It's a core regulatory function. And when you come from an environment of neglect, you don't have it. Okay. So my 9-year-old used to have a lot of food issues, a lot better now. That's because his regulatory system is developing. He's got a little more oxytocin, which means his suprachiasmatic nucleus is probably developing a lot more effectively as well. He still needs a lot of support to eat a meal at the table. And here's the thing. He frequently regresses to baby talk and says, Mama, feed me, or Mama, do. Oh, my gosh, I love it. I freaking love it. I mean, that is such clear regressive behavior. It's because food is stressful for him. It's stressful because he did not have someone to regulate his core functioning around food. So he's regressing anytime it's time to eat, and he's asking, Mama, feed me. Mama, do. Okay, I follow his lead. It seems to work. Good for you. However, this has increased to other areas, and also my 2.5-year-old now copies him, and I end up having to feed both of them at the same time. They get annoyed with each other if one gets fed a spoonful before the other. Oh my gosh, it's classic. That is classic. See, now you've got some classic sibling rivalry kind of stuff happening, but you're on the right track. But what I'm going to tell you is your 2.5-year-old is more easily soothed than your 9-year-old. Okay, so your 2.5-year-old has probably got better overall brain development than your 9-year-old does. So you're having to go back and see, they are emotionally, oh my gosh, they are emotionally developmentally probably the same age. All right, but your 9-year-old has very early core neglect experiences, so he's regressing to an infant. Your 2.5-year-old probably rarely regresses to an infant. So I want you to think about that. I mean, you stop looking at him as 9, all right? Let's just come up here. I'm going to help you out with this right here. We're going to stop looking at him like he's 9, and we're going to call him 2. So he's no longer 9. We're going to call him 2. So this, actually, the 2.5-year-old is now actually older. Because I bet you the 2.5-year-old has better regulatory ability than the 9-year-old. But your challenge, your core challenge, is with the 9-year-old. You have all these conflicting beliefs about him wanting to be fed, and that's creating stress for you. And when that creates stress for you, it creates stress for the 2.5-year-old. And then what gets interpreted is, there's not enough of mommy. That's what's happening. So the 2.5-year-old starts to get stressed and scared that mommy's going away, that he's not getting mommy. He's not getting mommy when he needs to be really getting mommy. The 9-year-old has to try to eliminate the 2.5-year-old because the 2.5-year-old is taking away the 9-year-old's time. So the 2-year-old is trying to push out the 2.5-year-old. So you really have to slow that down, and you have to say to your 9-year-old and you say to your 2.5-year-old, I'm not going to let anything happen to you. I can keep you safe. Mama can feed both of you. It's okay, and food can be fun. Food doesn't have to be scary. That's your key there. Calm down the environment. Calm yourself down. And if you can't manage to feed them both together, because that can be exhausting, then feed them one-to-one. Feed them one-on-one. Okay, just split up the meal times a little bit. All right, don't try to, you don't always have to try to do it together. I know it's idealistic to think about having a meal together, but you don't always have to do it together. There's a lot of stress in that. I'm feeling a lot of stress for you, Mom. I can feel that you're overwhelmed in that, and I can tell you are really doing a fantastic job. You're cued into so much. But you got a lot, with the 9-year-old, you got big deficits that you're having to try to compensate for. So I'm going to ask you to really go slow, especially go slow around food. And make sure you should eat first. You should eat first because that's going to help you to be able to go slower and to calm down and settle down a little bit more. And don't worry about the 2.5-year-old copying. The 2.5, it's not really copying that he's doing. The 2.5-year-old is just getting scared, and he's just doing what a 2.5-year-old would do in any other circumstance. He'd try to fight for his survival. So just tell him, hey, I've got you. It's going to be okay. I've been babying my 9-year-old for years and years. A few weeks ago during a meltdown, he stole his sister's soother 2.5 years, 2.5. See, I don't know that this is the word. I'm not sure. Where's my pen at? There it is. I'm not sure this is the word you want to use. And you say for years and years. To me, that sounds like you're exhausted. It sounds like you've been babying him, and he's not. He's like, it's almost like you're looking at him as a spoiled child for years and years. And a few weeks ago during a meltdown, he stole his sister's soother. She doesn't use a soother, just chews it when chewing. Oh, good, you're already doing some bottle stuff. Yes. See, this is what I'm sensing right here. It's, will he ever be off the bottle? As we've been doing this for years, I'm wondering if somehow fueling his need. Oh, see, that's what I was sensing. Let's just take a deep breath. See, you're afraid. You're afraid. See, this is where I tell parents, you have to transcend tools and techniques. You don't do something for an outcome. You do it because it's a process. And the process influences the outcome. You don't do something to control an outcome. You do it to influence the process. The babying, you don't want to be babying him. You don't want to look at it as babying him. You want to look at it as meeting his core needs. He's 9, but he's got deficits. And those are deficits you didn't create. Those are deficits he came to you with. So you want to look at that as meeting his core needs. So let's not use the word babying anymore, because that leads to years and years, and then it leads to, will he ever be off the bottle? The answer to that is absolutely yes. You're doing what you need to do, but I want you to change the energy behind it. The energy behind it has to become, I'm doing this because you didn't get it, and I know you need it. And I love you, and I want you to have everything that you need. And that's a much gentler energy. Feels so much better. Do you feel that? Can you feel that? I hope you can. Because see, then that leads to, wondering if you're doing something wrong, if you're fueling his need. You're not fueling his need. You're helping him to fulfill his need. You're not fueling it. You're fulfilling it. See, fueling it says you're making it worse. See, and then that's a self-repeating negative cycle. Oh man, that's heavy. That's heavy. We don't want to look at it as fueling, Heidi. We want to look at this as fulfilling. Fulfilling. See, when you're fulfilling his need, you're pouring into it. And as you're pouring into it, it starts to fill up. And pretty soon there's no more need. But see, when you're fueling a need, see, you look at this as the need. See, you're fueling it. That's like putting gas on it. And when you're putting gas on it, the need just gets bigger. Okay? Yes, this gap, it will be filled. It'll be filled in a great degree. Now, will he have needs as an adult? Absolutely, but those needs just come from his early trauma experience. And I can well see him needing babying for years to come. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So I think this is again, you're looking at it as babying. There's an energy behind the words we use. There's an energy behind the words we use. You're not babying him. You're meeting his needs. You're meeting his needs, and then you want to start educating him. Okay, education is very important. It's such an important piece of what I do and what I want to encourage parents to do, is because in educating your child about their stress that's causing them to feel and act the way they do, in educating them about their fear, then what you're doing is you're helping them grow up with a level of consciousness. See, that becomes very important. Helping them grow up with that level of consciousness about who they are and where they came from and what their needs are. Okay, so your question is, so if all behavior arises from a state of stress, why is my 2.5-year-old joining in when she's historically always been fine? Surely this is just her copying her big brother. No, it's what I just said back here. See, all of this is everyone's stressed. Everyone's stressed. Everyone is overwhelmed. And you set the tone. You set the regulatory tone for them. You set that oxytocin. And if you're being overwhelmed by this babying for years and years, then you're in a tough place. So you're in a place to where you think that you're creating soothing, but actually what this is doing is increasing cortisol for your 2.5-year-old. This is why I say you have to be easy about this. You have to take a step back, slow down. When your 2.5-year-old starts to get frustrated, when your 2.5-year-old starts to get annoyed, when they start to get stressed, you have to just stop for a minute, reach your hand over, rub their face, and say, it's okay, Mama's got you. Brother needs this right now, but we're going to be okay. Mama can take care of you and brother. And just create some soothing. But I want you to look at that within yourself first, though. I want you to start, really paying attention to that when it's showing up. So I feel like there's some real self-care that needs to be happening right now. Some real self-care. In fact, that reminds me of a friend mentioned a resource recently. I wrote it down. Hang on a moment. I'm going to go get it. Okay, I've not studied this lady's information, but I trust my friend who recommended it. The lady's name is Christine Neff, and she's written a lot on on self-forgiveness. And see, that's oh man, that's such a big, heavy term, but it's got so much light to it. So much light. And I sense that this work could be very good. That, go get one of I'm going to get one of her books too. I'm going to order one. I'm going to order one today. Go get one of Christine Neff's books and see if there's something in there for you, because I think there could be. But I just want to encourage you to fundamentally just calm down, slow down, and see, this is another, fear-based concern. It's copying. Is she copying her big brother? And think about all the bad things that are going to happen if she's copying. She's not copying. She's just expressing to try to get her own needs met. I mean, that's all she's doing. So sit with that. Sit with that. All right. Number 3. So my teen, 13, is different from the other 2 kids. He's not so aggressive or explosive, but we have a lot of lying, stealing food, money, secrecy, and defiance. So he's more hypo-aroused, especially over long-standing family rules about screen time. I'm assuming screen time is television. Okay, so he's a little bit more withdrawn, a little bit more easily shut down. He's been smoking after school. Okay, so he's smoking. Smoking is a stimulant, so it kind of picks him up for a minute with some of his depression and withdrawal and anxiety, which we've spoken to him about using your phrases from the course. Okay, and there wasn't a lot of info in your course about teens. It's all the same, really. It doesn't change. This information applies to adults as well. You got to focus on seeing the regress state, addressing the regress state, and just meeting the child, teen, and I call teens children too, so I may have been referring to a teen as a child and you just didn't even know I was talking about it, but it's pretty much the same. It is the same. It's even with the same with adults. So you did the course about teens, all right, with the one I did with Helene, all right. I don't know if some of his behaviors are from past or just teenage behavior. Okay, yes, past, absolutely. The past influences the present. Teenage behavior, well, the significance of the teenage behavior is that when his brain right now is in a pruning stage. So it is really heated up. His brainstem, his limbic system's more activated. So any past material that's been there, and I'm assuming that he's adopted as well, and may also have that same history of neglect, because I see that with the stealing. I see that with the defiance. I mean, you're talking about a scared child. You're talking about an overwhelmed, scared child. An oppositional, defiant child is a scared child. So, the lying, he just feels fearful. He can't admit to the truth because in that moment he's too scared. He's in survival. And a lot of these things that you're describing, these things right here, where's my pen at? There it is. The lying, the stealing the food, the money, the secrecy and defiance. A lot of these things you're describing as, I'm just going to make one. Oh, no. What happened here? Keep those. All right, great. Just make one quick little edit. There we go. I feel so much better now. A lot of those things you're describing there are very neglect related. Okay. So see fear. He's 13, but you're seeing a neglected child. How old was he when he came to be adopted by you? About 5. Because that's kind of what I sense. He's still scared. He's still a scared little teenager. The thing is, I call these turtle children. They get overstimulated. When they become stressed, they shut down and go into their shell. And a lot of times this makes parents anxious. And so there's an interesting dynamic that occurs between a turtle child and an anxious parent. Is it is painful for them to be around one another, because the shutdown, the withdrawal, I call the turtle going into the shell, that is so stressful for the parent that the parent tries harder to connect, and the trying harder to connect actually stresses the little turtle out even more and makes them go further into their shell. So with the turtle child, you have to learn to really just show up and be present, especially if you have like your 2-year-old, quote, 9-year-old and your 2.5-year-old, they're requiring a lot of time and energy. And so it's easy for the 13-year-old, because it's his nature is kind of be off in his own little shell. You got to work on just being present with him, just showing up, just going and sitting and being quiet, not talking too much, not trying to touch, making time to go just to spend some individual time, some one-on-one time. See, that all becomes very, very important with the turtle child. He seems really vacant, getting into the shower with his socks still on, forgetting to wash when he's in the shower, leaving doors and windows wide open, not flushing. All that's neglect. Neglect. Classic neglect stuff. 13, his brain's stressed. He's stressed out. So all of that is, confused and distorted thinking, suppressed short-term memory. So you're talking about an overwhelmed child, and he's just, because he's not aggressive and explosive, he just is not demanding as much as the other ones. But he's not 13. He's 5. He's 5, and he's not been taught these things, and you're going to need to slow down with him and kind of go back to a teaching phase with him. And see, I feel that all of a sudden, I just said that, oh my gosh, I just feel like that became overwhelming. You've got a lot on your plate. I want to acknowledge this, because you don't have a 2.5-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 13-year-old. You have a 2-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and maybe a 5-year-old. And I don't know all the history. I don't know the background. So I don't know if some of this, if there's some parentification that the 13-year-old carries. It doesn't seem like there would be, but, quite possibly. So you're going to have to back up with him. You're going to have to start teaching him again slowly, not in a way that's babying him, but in a way that's really just saying, you know what, I just want to help you make sure we get this again. And let's calm down some of the things that are stressful in your life. And let's spend a little bit more time just being together. And being a little less shaming and punitive with him, because he's not doing these things intentionally. He's doing these things because he's stressed out and he can't think to do anything different. So, I really want you to think about that. And sneaking the extra screen time at night, he's just looking for an escape. I mean, that's really what that becomes about. And here's what I'm going to suggest on that is when he gets up in the middle of the night and he wants to watch television, ask him to come get you. Because, see, the only way he's sneaking extra screen time at night is if no one's around. So make it okay for him to watch extra TV if he comes and gets you. Then that way the two of you get to be there together, and you could doze off and take a nap. You could read a book. You don't have to watch the television, but it's going to give you a great opportunity to get some one-on-one time with him. He says, when I try to talk to him, he always says, of course, he always says he's fine. He's a classic turtle child. It's hard for him to engage. So don't try to talk to him. Try to spend more time being present with him. So this is the child. The reason I say turtle is because if you go anywhere and you go to see a turtle, you run right up to that turtle and you start talking, that turtle's going to shoot that shell. And you can't get that turtle out of its shell. You have to learn to be patient and quietly engaging with the turtle. That's how you connect to the turtle. And you learn to be present, and the turtle will come out. And before you know it, there won't be any issues because the turtle will be there. His brain allows him to soothe. The oxytocin is able to flow. He's not interpreting all the threats and the overwhelming sensory integration information anymore, and he can communicate. But you got to give him an opportunity to work himself out of the shell, and trying to talk to him is just going to make it more difficult. He's actually really scared of failing and making mistakes. Absolutely, because he's afraid of being rejected. He's afraid of being abandoned. He denies everything and protests a lot that there's nothing wrong with me. You got to back off of that, especially at adolescence. Okay, so he comes from a pretty challenging early history that has already set him up to feel like he's not good enough. So when he starts to interpret the adults around him wanting him to talk and wanting him to express, then what he's really saying is you're trying to confirm that I'm not good enough. So you got to back away from that, because you don't want him to rebel against you because he feels like you think he's not good enough. Then he's just going to find peers that make him feel good enough. He's going to find peers just like him that he connects with, that he feels, accepted by and understood. So you want to back away from pressuring him too much to talk about what's going on. You have to allow that to unfold and to unravel. He's not the same as your quote unquote 9-year-old, who's more expressive. This one's a little different, so you got to slow yourself down when it comes to him. Last week he ripped down a list I'd made for him and stuck on his door to help him remember to do things like clean his teeth, wash his hands and face, and pack his school bag, because all of those things make him feel like he's not good enough. So you have to give him gentle reminders. You say, son, I know you remember this, but I'm just going to mention, be sure to brush your teeth. Hey, son, do you need any help packing your school bag? Hey, I know you probably did, but just make sure you wash your hands and your face. Okay, so it's non-threatening. It's assuming that he did, which lowers some of the threat for him, which will lower some of the resistance. And we argued about it, and he shouted that he wasn't a retard and didn't need a bloody list on his door, that he wasn't stupid. Oh, he's so sensitive. Oh, so sensitive. Yeah, his self-esteem is way down. Yeah, way down. You want to tread lightly with this guy, because he's He's just waiting to be rejected. He's just waiting to be abandoned. It's almost like he feels it coming. And every time you engage with him and interact with him, then it just exposes him to feeling that all over again. So yeah, make suggestions and then help him. Just say, can I help you with this? Can I help you with that? Offer help. And that offering the help also creates an opportunity for teaching. So very good stuff. Of course it was meant to help. Of course. I wouldn't expect it being any other way. All right. I hope that was beneficial to you. Now, let's see here. I pretty much finished issue number 3. Okay. Just want to know how to help someone who doesn't want to be helped. All right. I think we might have gotten into that. Everything I do to try and help just gets met with aggression. That's right. What happens if you try to stick your finger inside the turtle shell? It's going to get snapped. Don't do that. You got to back up. Slow down. Slow down, Mom. Take a deep breath. Slow down. It's a different breed of child here. You got to go slow with this one. And you offer to help, but when you offer to help, you can't be anxious. And probably, you know what? Depending on his history, he probably spent a lot of time figuring stuff out for himself. So sometimes offering to help is just threatening. And you just don't offer to help for a while. Just say, if you need me, I'm here. I love you, and I want to help out wherever you need me. Okay, so just make sure he understands that you're there, that you're available, but don't push it. So that'll become a very, very important. He's doing okay at school, but forgetting lots of things there too. That's because he's stressed. Even things he wants to be a part of, like trips, special days. That's all of that is short-term memory challenges. I'm sick of verbally reminding and asking him to do stuff, which is why I resorted to the list in the first place. But this doesn't work either. Oh, why are you so sick of it? I mean, tell me what this is about. I'm sorry. Go back. Where's my little trusty pen? Give me my pen back. Okay, why are you so sick of it? Is it because it's? I think you're sick of it because you feel like you're beating a dead horse, and he probably feels like it too. So I don't think it's not so much. It's not the verbal reminding is not so much the issue. You got to go back and look at it as teaching, slow, gentle teaching, repetitive. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Okay, you do repetition until they get it, and that's the difficult thing. But I think that you're sick of it because you really feel like you're beating him over the head. And I think it's the approach. Just change the approach because he needs the reminders and the suggestions. But and ask him. Is there some better way that I can support you? Is there some better way I can help you out with this? And I think that'll feel a lot better for both of you. And you say he's not interested at all in discussing his past or his birth family. Should I just put some info and photos in a small book and leave it in his room for him to look through on his own in his own time? No, don't do that. Actually, if he's not interested, leave it alone. He's in survival right now, just trying to be good enough where he's at. And all of that stuff right now is just a threat to him. 13 is a very tough age. Adolescence is a very tough age. You got a lot of brain stuff going on. You got a lot of contending with those old messages, those old stories. Back away from that. Don't talk to him about it. Don't mention it. Don't bring up any books or anything else. Wait for him to do that, and he may not be willing to broach that until he's an adult. Right now, he's spending all his time just trying to be good enough. All of that stuff is a reminder to him that he's not. So I would just back off of that and don't even explore it. It's because truly it's not critical. It's just not critical that any of that happens at this point in time. Alrighty, let's go to our next slide. Okay, now by the way, my 9-year-old head and body bangs in bed before, during, and after sleep, and has done so for years. It's self-soothing. Often he does this while muttering aggressive things to himself or pretends to fight baddies. Wow, that's sad. That's a child who spent a lot of time early, probably in a crib by himself. This pediatric consultant has offered using a sleep medication for him, which we don't want to use. We lay with him each night before sleep, as you recommend, but after a few minutes, he insists that we leave so he can body bang. Yeah, that's because it's conditioned. It's what he's learned. So here's what I want to suggest. I want to suggest that you do the bottle at night, and then I want to suggest that you do some really hard rocking with him at night to try to stimulate the banging, the body banging. Do some really hard, because he's looking for the soothing, the stimulation. It's activating his vestibular system. That's the banging, the rocking, and it's activating that, which is actually how he has learned to release oxytocin, which is what he has learned to help him to go to sleep. But he typically will have to do it until he exhausts himself, because oxytocin only lasts in short bursts, and so then he has to exhaust himself to sleep. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is do some hard rocking with him. Find out what kind of pressure really feels good to him that you can apply, and you want to do this because you want to become a substitute for the banging itself. But when you're providing it, that he's getting also the sensory stimulation with your body and your rhythm, and that's all very good. So do that for a few minutes with him, and then say, honey, it's okay to body bang, but I don't want to leave you by yourself, because it's okay to do that while I'm here with you. I want to be with you. I want your body to know, use these words, I want your body to know that you're not alone. I want your body to know that it's okay for you to go to sleep. I want your body to know that when you wake up, we're going to still be here and everything's going to be okay. Give him a bottle. Do some very hard rocking yourself, okay? And then be there with him while he's body banging. Read a book while he does it. Do anything that you can that will create another stream of soothing while he's learning to soothe himself. And if you can do that, not while he's learning to soothe himself, but actually while he's soothing himself, if you can do that, then you will start to plant the seeds that you can actually help him to soothe, and he doesn't have to rely on the body banging. So that's my suggestion on that. And yeah, it can be quite loud, and I can imagine it does wake up the other family. But here's what I want you to keep in mind and picture. I want you to picture a 6-month-old, a 12-month-old, a 2-year-old in this neglectful place, unable to soothe themselves down, or even, what was going on in utero. What was going on with mom while she was carrying him in the womb, that would cause the need to try to recreate this level of soothing and stimulation. So I think that's about it. I think that I hope that helps. I hope that gets you back on track. I don't feel like you need the sleeping medication. You can introduce melatonin. Introduce maybe one melatonin 30 minutes before bed. That will just kind of help foster the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the circadian rhythms, to kind of calm down. Melatonin calms down the circadian rhythms, which will help him to fall asleep a little easier. I wouldn't recommend sleeping medication. You start doing that now, he's going to be on it the rest of his life. He has to learn how to regulate to sleep not on his own, but through you. He will learn to do it on his own. So through your teaching and through your guidance, he'll learn to do it on his own. I just want to say, oh my God, you're doing an amazing job. You have a big responsibility. There's a lot you're having to do, but just hang in there. God bless each and every one of you, and just know that, with patience and faith and perseverance, you're going to get through this, and keep choosing love. In those moments when it's really tough, just keep choosing love, and you're going to get through. You're going to get through. Okay.